Okay, so this is Rose Diamond from Tribe in Transition, and I'm here today with my friend Maggie, and we are exploring the nature of soul work, and in particular, we want to explore together what we mean by soul friendship, because Maggie and I have had a very unique friendship for 14 years now, and we both refer to it in this term of soul friendship. And so, Maggie, I vividly remember the day we met. We met in a little place called Golden Bay at the top of the South Island of New Zealand. And the funny thing was that we both actually moved to New Zealand about 10 years before from Scotland. And we'd lived in Edinburgh about a street away from each other and hadn't met at that time. So, and if we had met at that time, probably we wouldn't have even noticed each other because we were coming from such different ways of life. So that to me suggested something about the timeliness of us meeting in Golden Bay. Can you say anything about how that was for you?
Well, I was aware that I was in Golden Bay to meet somebody who on a soul agenda was going to be an important meeting. And a week before I met you, I picked up the local newspaper, saw your photograph in there, and announced very loudly to all the inhabitants of my home at the time that this was the person I was here to meet, and I'd meet you within a week, which is precisely what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
At the moment I saw you, I knew it was you.
Yeah. I didn't have exactly those words for it, but I remember that day. It was almost like it was a bit like you feel when you fall in love, except in this case it wasn't going to be a romantic or a sexual relationship, but there's that feeling of sort of excitement and raised awareness and a kind of sense of destiny unfolding. And as I was saying,
yes,
there was that immediate connection between us. I think I was particularly attracted to you at the time because you were so feisty. I live to regret that a bit later.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes.
So that's I think that's part of the sense of a soul friendship, is that feeling of meeting at the appointed time for a mission as yet to be discovered, but
yes,
sense of kind of recognition of each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and also a sort of an acknowledgement that a journey is about to begin, and having absolutely no idea where it's going or the nature of it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But basically, in a moment like that, there's a sort of internal surrender, knowing that soul knows exactly what it's doing, and just be quiet and get on with it. Don't resist, it's futile.
Yeah, I don't think I would have had that kind of language to describe it in that time. It was just a feeling of excitement and, having met somebody, because I think it's quite easy to make a lot of acquaintances and to know a lot of people. But in my experience, friends who come along that I'm going to have a really deep connection with are not that common. So it's exciting when that happens. I want to say, I think, a bit about what was going on in my life at that time, because I think that sort of fits in with the timeliness of it. I'd been on my soul journey for 10 years, 11 years, 12 years about, and most of that had been, inner work, doing a lot of meditation and writing. And just before I met you, I'd actually given up a 7-year job that I'd had teaching counselling and psychotherapy skills in Nelson Polytechnic. And I'd moved to Golden Bay thinking that I was about to join a team of women and we were going to set up a transformational learning centre. And as soon as I arrived in Golden Bay, all the other women, for very good reasons, all scattered to the different parts of the world that they'd come from. And I was kind of left sitting in Golden Bay thinking, oh, okay, so what am I going to do now? And other things that I was just about to publish Migration to the Heartland, which was my first book, which is a soul journey adventure story. I just created my first website, which was called Soul Sanctuary. I just come back from an 8-day inquiry groups. So all this, you know, the threads that have continued on in what I call my soul work since then were all there, ready, sort of like the foundations were laid. So you entered my life at that time when I was kind of moving from more of a sort of the inner part of the soul journey into, okay, so what's my work in the world and what am I here to do and how am I going to do it? That's how I see it.
Mm.
Were there any sort of similarities for you? Was it any sort of particular thing that was happening for you that you made it timely?
Well, as you probably remember, I was sort of coming to the end, or I should say the edge of my sanity in relation to a very challenging soul-guided relationship. Yeah, which pushed me to the edges of everything. You know, psychologically, physically, mentally, spiritually. Excuse me. And yeah, and I was extremely grateful to have an opportunity for a purpose apart from that.
Yeah.
So it was a really necessary. It was like a life belt being hurled into a turbulent ocean.
We're happy to have been your life belt.
Oh well, I clung to it. Yeah, until it hauled me out of the ocean.
Yeah. So for both of us, there was that sense of an old, you know, a chapter closing and a new
Yes.
chapter just about to open up, and both of us sort of sitting there thinking, absolutely not really knowing where it was going to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was the exciting bit. You know, having absolutely no idea, just being aware of all the possibilities that
Yeah.
suddenly opened up, and having no idea where it was going to go. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, and what I remember of that first year of our friendship was that we did a lot of work around our earlier soul journeys, and particularly at that sort of beginning point when what we call spiritual emergence, when we'd actually been starting to enter into the inner world and to come to an understanding of it, and that we'd both been kind of wounded in that emergence. So and I know you've talked to me, you know, we've had another conversation about that in the Transforming Loss series, so we don't necessarily want to go too much into that, but you know, if there's anything kind of uppermost that you want to say about that, be
No, I don't think so. You know, it's yeah, it was a very testing time for me, and at that point, ended culminated with me actually leaving my marriage and being forced to lose custody of my children, which was very, very difficult. And that was the beginning of a whole new chapter for me, because it became my life for the first time.
yeah.
You know, prior to that, I was a daughter, you know, a wife, a mother, all of those things. I mean, not that I ever stopped being a mother, but yeah. So yes, that was a difficult and challenging time, and yeah, it was a huge part of the emergence process, and it was very painful.
Yeah, similarly. I mean, I'm just to give it a context. I know for me that was around the age of 28 that sort of spiritual emergence started to happen in a very different way to yours, but also involving the ending of a marriage. So I think what we were doing. So this was like 20. I don't know, 22 years later or something. That's, you know, we were coming together to heal some of the wounds from that first part of the journey towards authenticity, and sort of mend the holes, if you like. In so healing was the first important part, I think, and we did that through. Remember, we both wrote our own stories and then came together and read the stories. And so from the beginning there was a sense that we did play as well, but there was more of a kind of work. We were here together to work.
Yeah, I think there was an acknowledgement of that one right from the beginning, that we had work to do together, and although neither of us was totally clear about what that work was, there was a commitment to following wherever so led us.
Yes. Yes. And so part of that was finding the common language between us.
Yeah.
For soul journey, what was it and what was soul, and so a lot of exploration around that. And although I'm calling it work, it was also, we were living in this stupendously beautiful place, and it was we had a lot of fun as well, didn't we? It wasn't just
Absolutely.
So that's my kind of first memory of what we came together to do. So what happened next? Let me think. Go ahead.
I was going to say the first thing that really came out of that was the TLC.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Do you want to say a bit about the TLC?
Transformational Learning Community. Yeah. Well, we both came from different places to that, and spent many months in really intense conversation about what a transformational learning community actually was, and what purpose it might have. And and for me, in that, relating back to what we were just saying, at the time that I was going through this really painful emergence many years before, the one thing that I had needed was some community that I could turn to, some support. Just even one person that I could talk to, and there was nobody there. None of the current institutions were in a position to actually supply that. So for me, that was what was behind this passion for creating a community which could support the emergence of others. And we talked around that for a really long time. Yeah, and some of it was very fiery.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I kept saying to you, but it's all about creative tension, and all the good stuff comes out of creative tension.
Yes.
And it did, but it wasn't always comfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll come back to the TLC in a minute, but I just want to say something to that. I think maybe one of the ways that a soul friendship differs from an more ordinary kind of friendship is that there's not just permission, but there's a kind of, it's part of the work that we came together to do, to what I call knock lumps off each other's ego.
Yes.
And we are two feisty, strong, independent women, and so obviously coming together, there were times when we drove each other absolutely nuts. There was some, it hasn't been an easy relationship.
Yeah.
Partly because neither of us have flinched away from being each other's mirrors in a way, and I think however evolved we are, and both of us have been doing sort of consciousness practice for many years now, and however evolved we are, we never actually like to have somebody point out those parts of us that we either can't see ourselves, our blind spots, or so it's always, it's quite delicate and difficult, and but that's been a very important part of it wasn't easy. As you said, there was this creative tension.
Yeah, but there was always the sense that whatever it was that we as individuals were experiencing in relation to each other, whatever it was that we were doing together was far more important than any bruised egos. it just wasn't, well, it was about that in the sense that it was an exercise in dissolving ego, but it wasn't about stroking egos in any way at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that part of our work was supported by, I know you were very much into Andrew Cohen around
Yes.
that time, and was What is Enlightenment magazine? Was that
Mm.
what it was called? So that at the time, I think many of us were thinking in terms of, what is enlightenment? And I don't really think in those terms anymore, strangely. But I think Andrew Cohen had a very, what's the right word for it? Fierce ethic around, our spiritual work. And it's not just kind of, all bliss and floating on a cloud. It's very much about who we are in our daily life and how we actually walk the talk as love in action. And I think that that has been that's a seed that we planted, or we've grown together in our own ways over the years. Yeah, so there was definitely that sense of, and then later on we both did work with Craig Hamilton, who was a student of Andrew. So there was very much that sense of, I think up until that point I'd been more kind of exploring soul, but then this whole teaching around the evolutionary impulse came in, and that for me was about very much about creativity, making a space to receive the inspiration that's always coming to us in every moment, and then what do we do with that? How do we transform that? So I think that this last 14 years for me has been an experiential day-to-day training in what transformation actually means, how to do it, how to be a magician of transformation. It's still learning.
I'd just like to say in relation to the Craig bit, the fact that we were both engaged in the community around Craig's teachings was actually an incredible part of the evolution of our soul journey, because it actually gave us a shared language. We could actually speak to each other in a way that we actually understood directly what it was that we were each expressing to the other, without actually anything, any misunderstanding, miscommunication, or anything. And that was a huge accelerant, having that shared language to actually move us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Craig definitely brought in an aspect of a conceptual map that we both needed in order to move into our next flowering. And then we used to meet we would listen to, because it was a weekly teachings, and we'd meet often in your house in Paradise Way. And
of course, what else?
The sun would be, in this beautiful view with the mountains and the sea and the sun shining in, and everything is completely, it's just absolutely the most stunning environment. It's like, I felt like many times, I don't really think about heaven, but it was like it was like a really elevated state of consciousness. Just listening and having those conversations. I mean, we felt so blessed, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were.
Totally.
We were.
Yeah. So I mean, that was part of that whole process for me. Was actually at the time I was living on virtually nothing. I was living a very nomadic lifestyle, having chosen that the most important thing for me was to do my creative and spiritual work. And so, in the world's terms, in an economic sense, I was just really scraping by. But always, because we were having these amazing spiritual experiences as a weekly, daily reality, I always felt like I knew, and I still know, that I'm one of the most incredibly blessed people in the world. I feel like, so for me, part of that whole learning was that success, if you like to call it, or it's got nothing to do with, or well-being. It's got nothing to do with material, what you have materially.
Yeah.
But because part of that learning for me was learning to trust, and that I was so totally well taken care of in every part of that journey, and so were you.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I don't think anything we can say about it really is going to fully capture how amazing it was, because I know a lot of people, if at that time and still now, if I say, well, I gave up my job and I didn't have any income and blah, 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 they'll sort of look at me in horror, why would you do that? Is there something wrong with you?
Well, of course, I had actually done the same thing.
Yes.
I had a really high-level corporate job, and with the most amazing income I could possibly have imagined. And I walked away from it on my 50th birthday as a gift to myself. Which is how I ended up in Golden Bay, and it was the best choice I ever made.
Yeah,
one of the best choices I ever made. Yeah,
yeah. So there was definitely a sense for me all through that time that my soul had orchestrated this scenario. So even when things did get tough, and it did feel quite tough at times, a bit scary sometimes, I had that as a sort of that was the container that I was living within, that my soul had chosen this for me, for my personality to learn, and then there was also that context of the teachings about the conscious evolution that, so we were sort of doing our personal alchemy or personal transformation within a container, which was woven of many different teachings and threads and supports, I think.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to go back to the TLC for a minute, because we started doing. I was living on halfway around the bay, and you were on the. And I often came over to visit you, and I can remember we were working on I was working on a newsletter, and I can remember one day, like, there was this absolutely massive thunderstorm going on, so it's like torrential rain and massive thunderstorm, and I had set my mind that we had to get the newsletter out, and I had to get over to you. I remember hurtling across the bay through this huge torrential rain and thunderstorm because we had to get the TLC on the road. So there was,
as always,
this dramatic element to it all.
Yeah. Well, there's been a few of those on our journey. Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to talk a bit about the event, what we call
yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know, really. I mean, it was so incredibly significant that, there's a real sort of sense of reverence about it for me. But you've talked about my home, which was sort of elevated halfway up a hill, which had an incredible outlook across the bay, etc. And it was built on stilts, and with a very steep hillside behind. And one day we were visiting and we were working. I'm not sure exactly what we were working on at that point in time, but we were always working on something, trying to move things forward. And again, the most incredible storm, torrential rain for about 4 or 5 days. And we'd just eaten, and I was standing in the kitchen, which was closest to the hill. And as I was standing there, I had that really strange sensation, like when you're on a train and you don't know whether it's your train that's moving or the one next to you that's moving, but something's moving and you become totally discombobulated, really. And what I realized was that I was actually looking at trees, actually standing upright, moving past the window like that. And my brain couldn't compute it at all. And then it just started coming quicker and quicker, and I realized that the whole hillside was giving away and coming straight in towards the house. And I remember I just screamed, "Grab your car keys and get out!" Oh, we did, and we rushed out and parked on a high spot across the road. And that was a moment of total surrender to the universe. Because I had run downstairs and driven the car over there, etc. My heart was racing because I have a heart condition, and I really thought I was having a heart attack as well. I was sitting there thinking, "Wow, is this the end?" And you would come and join me in my car, and we were sitting there, and it was like, unbeknownst to each other, we had both made this huge internal decision of basically just surrendering to whatever happened, realizing that the power of what was happening around us was far greater than anything that we could possibly counter. And we had both just quietly sat there and just surrendered and said, "Okay, I trust."
Yeah.
And yeah, and that unfolded the most incredible chapter.
Yeah.
Both of us, yeah. I think that was one of the most significant moments in our entire relationship. Was that moment of both individually making that choice, and then discovering that we both made that choice at the same moment.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me it was choice was I chose to align with my higher self, which is the same thing really. It's to surrender, but it's like whatever happens, I choose to align. I choose to take this as an experience for my evolution. It was like, and it felt like a life death situation. Because I remember sitting there and there was water, just rivers of water just coming down the road. All the potholes in the road, and we didn't know whether we'd be safer staying where we were, or what we were going to find if we drove up the road. We had nowhere to go. We had very little money. We were just completely thrown into the arms of the universe at that time, and obviously we both lived and we survived. And but it was interesting that other people lost their gardens and that, but there actually weren't that many other people that lost their house. And I think somehow for both of us, it was, as you say, it was a pivotal time, for both of us in our spiritual evolution. A leap was taken at that time, and it took months really after that for that to sort of be integrated. It was a sort of major deconstruction that happened, and we were just, the other part of it was that after a couple of days when things started to calm down, the generosity that was offered to us, we spent Christmas on this absolutely stunning, one of the best, most luxurious holiday homes in the bay, loading it up on the top of a hill with a fabulous view for nothing, completely free. And then we went and stayed for several weeks in the Marlborough Sounds, in another absolutely stunning place. It was like, so that was just another lesson in how, when you actually let go and surrender, really, sincerely, and that the universe has our back, that we were just completely taken care of in the most amazing way. And it was all, none of it was quite as we imagined it might be. It was always different, quite bizarre at times. But I remember being out there in the Marlborough Sounds maybe a month after the event happened, and you were talking about, we were both sort of reflecting on where we were in our state of consciousness, and you were talking about a sea monster. What was it about sea monster? It's like you could almost see something coming out of the water, but you couldn't quite see what it was. So
it was like being aware of the fact, just being able to see the tip of a fin or something just emerging at moments from the depths, and being aware that there was something down there, but not quite being able to make out what it was.
Yes, and at the same time, I was having this feeling that that I was very close to a whole new stage of consciousness where I wasn't quite ready to step into it. Yes, it's felt like, too big a step somehow. So yeah, I think there've been several experiences, that was the most intense, where we're shown something, we're shown what's to come, and then we
Well, it was an experience of actually having everything stripped away, absolutely everything stripped away, and being okay with it.
Yeah.
And just saying, on the really the deepest level, okay, I trust that this is for my best interests.
Yeah.
I don't know why or how, but I trust that I will be taken care of.
Yeah.
And we were, in a way that was so abundant. You were talking about spending Christmas in that incredible house, which was just stunning. But not only that, but because we'd been made homeless, we were actually given vouchers to go and get food for Christmas. And we were eating things like smoked salmon and drinking wine and things, which we would not have been able to even think about affording, had that not taken place.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And at the same time, so there's a sense that we both were at times quite shaky as well. It's like you say, when everything's stripped away, I mean, that's quite a profound experience that's happening on many different levels of the being. So I certainly remember days when I felt really, really shaky. And yet at the same time, there was always, again, it was like that container of abundance, that we're being held in abundance and love.
And that has never left me.
Mm.
That's never, ever left me. I've lived in that space of trust and abundance ever since.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it wasn't just a transient peaceful glimpse of something. It has sort of become a permanent way of living in this world, of just total trust and just accepting that whatever is presenting is there for a reason, and just being with it without resisting it.
Yeah. And for me, I know this is not the same for everybody, but for me, for some reason, I needed to be stripped down to the bone in order to really get that, to fully get that, that that I think we were, it's about that sort of sense of wholeness within that I don't need to, I don't need to do something to deserve it. That as long as I'm following my authentic self, and as long as I'm following what's true for me, that there is a connection with something bigger that I call the universe, and other people call it something different, which we're part of. We can't fall out of it. It's there. It's taking, we're part of it. But we, in that experience, that it wasn't just an idea, it was a lived reality. We were actually living in that reality.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes, very much so.
So I've kind of come to see, from that situation and others, that those times of what can, from the outside, be seen as misfortune, or disaster even, are actually opportunities. They're real opportunities to crack open the old shell of the self, and to step out into something, into the next level of consciousness.
Very much so. Gosh, how blessed we are.
Yeah, it's amazing. And yet, it has to be said that this is what we chose.
Yes.
I think it is possible to be offered these incredible opportunities, but we have to actually consciously choose them and engage with them. So people can say, well, how lucky, but it's not just luck. It's a choice. The choice that we keep making. Yeah. So I'm aware that we've actually coming towards the end of the time, and there's a lot more that we could say. Is there anything else that you want to add that you think we've missed out that's really important?
Well, I think that really one of the really important aspects of this, and what has actually made friendship a soul friendship, as opposed to many other friendships in life, is that there have been times when both of us have felt that we'd like to walk away because it's been so challenging. We've had several really pivotal moments in our relationship where the easy option would have been to walk away
from each other.
From each other, yeah. And yet we've both actually gone, hang on, that's not what this is about. This is about something far bigger than me, far bigger than both of us. And this is happening for a reason. What is there for me to learn from this, and how can I use that and take it into the next stage of our journey together? And we've done that so many times.
Yeah.
When in other circumstances, it would have just made total sense to go, oh, God, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, and I think each time we've done that, there's been a deepening appreciation of each other, and now of course we're both back. We've both been back in the UK. You came back first, and here we both are in the UK, and having on a new stage of the journey, which is in many ways much gentler and less dramatic than the New Zealand experience. But all those threads, the transformational learning, the soul sanctuary, the soul journey, they're all still there. I kind of see myself at this point in terms of soul weaving, that I'm weaving together the threads that, and sort of seeing towards the end of my life now, what do I need to do with all of this in order to make my contribution, and I think partly where these conversations and the soul sanctuary circles are coming from. It's like how to, as we become sort of crones, as we become elders, how to actually give that back, because we've worked hard, it's like back in when we were 28 or so, there wasn't the same support for spiritual work as there is now.
Absolutely not.
And I think that's why, looking back, I can see the evolution happening, see how it's happening. And I can see the part that we've played in that, just by being willing to participate in it and experience it, that we've played a part in that. And I just think, wow, what an incredibly exciting time to be alive. And
yes. Yeah. And what a purposeful life. We've often joked, that from the outside, anybody looking in would say, oh gosh, they don't do very much, really, do they? They sit there, bit of writing, bit of reading, lots of conversation, all the rest of it. Not much of a life, really. But that's actually not what it's been about at all, has it? It's always been really, really intense, and all to the purpose of evolving consciousness, both our own and then what we can take from that we can give to others.
Yes, and I think that sense of giving back is not just, what do I need to go out and do? It's not about doing anything. It's more, I think, that as we push back, each of us individually and together, push back, reveal more about the soul journey and consciousness and the evolution of consciousness, that by itself is the contribution, that any one of us, or any two of us, or any 10 of us doing work together are actually speeding up the process of evolution and putting those ideas out. So back in the days of the transformational learning community, I mean, that didn't actually go in the way that we planned it to go. But what I've realized since is that it doesn't really matter, because we were planting seeds.
Absolutely.
We were bringing through a language, and so we were actually making a contribution simply by doing that.
And there was some really radical stuff in there, in the sense of, as you know, and And it's been interesting watching in the years since then, you know, how so much of it has actually emerged in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
And one can only say, wow, you know, that's amazing. We talked about that 15 years ago, and, you know, we had it in our, you know, there it is. It's, you know, it's here.
yeah. That's the heartening bit about it, you know, that it's happening. And you know, I used to think back then I had to do it all, you know, and now of course
I know.
I realize that I realize that you know, I just have to do my bits, you know, that there's a lot of us doing this together, and we're all working on our little, like, it's like making a fishing net. We're all working on our own little bit of a fishing net.
That's a good analogy, actually. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so there's something very meaningful about it all. Oh,
not really anywhere to go from there, you know. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot more that we could say, but I think that's probably enough for now, you know.
Yeah.
Sown a few more seeds. So namaste.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for being my soul friend, Maggie.
Oh, you're so welcome, my dear.
What an
It's
adventure.
mostly been a pleasure.
Likewise. Okay, before we get into anything else, I'm just going to stop. Okay, bye.